Okay, so I want to talk about something today that I think a lot of people have experienced but never really had the words for. You ever just feel like something's coming? Like nothing in your life has technically changed. Everything looks the same from the outside, but inside there's this low hum. This feeling like, okay, something is shifting. I don't know what, I don't know when, but something is different. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and the more I look into it, the more I realize that most people who go through really significant changes in their life, like the kind where they look back 2 years later and go, wow, I am not the same person. Most of them say the same thing, that before it happened, there were signs, little things, moments that didn't make sense at the time, but in hindsight were basically life going, hey, pay attention. This matters. And I'm not talking about anything mystical or woo-woo here, okay? I mean, maybe a little. But mostly, I'm talking about the kind of stuff that happens to normal people living normal lives. The stuff you brush off in the moment and then remember years later, like, oh, that was it. That was the thing. So let's get into it.
The first sign is that feeling of quiet wrongness. And I want to be really specific about what I mean here, because I think this one gets misread a lot. It's not depression. It's not anxiety. It's not burnout, although it can kind of look like all of those from the outside. It's more like you're going through your day, doing everything you're supposed to do, and on paper your life is completely fine, maybe even good, but there's this feeling underneath all of it that's like, this isn't it. Not in a dramatic way, not in a I want to blow everything up way, just this quiet, persistent, almost gentle sense of I am not where I'm supposed to be. And here's what usually happens at that point. Your brain, which is very good at its job, by the way, very committed to keeping things stable, your brain steps in immediately. It starts doing this thing where it lists all the reasons you should be fine. You have a job. You have people who love you. Other people have it so much worse. Stop being ungrateful. Get it together. And those people at that point just override the feeling. Because the logical argument is pretty convincing. And the feeling doesn't come with a logical argument. It just comes with this low-level discomfort that's easy to push down. But here's the thing. That feeling doesn't go away. It just gets quieter for a while, and then comes back louder. And the people who learn to listen to it early, even when they can't explain it, even when nothing on paper justifies it, those are the people who tend to make moves before they're forced to, before life makes the decision for them. So if you've been feeling that lately, that quiet wrongness, I just want to say, that's worth taking seriously. Not panicking over, just taking seriously.
The second one is repeated situations, and this is a big one. I think about this one a lot because I've lived it, and I've watched people close to me live it, and it's one of those things that seems so obvious from the outside and is completely invisible when you're in it. You know how sometimes you look back at a period of your life and realize you kept ending up in the same situation over and over again. Same dynamic in your relationships, same argument with different people, same job, different company, same exact problems. And at the time, you're just thinking, I'm unlucky, or the world is full of difficult people, or this is just how things are. But it's not bad luck. It really isn't. What it actually is, and this took me a while to really sit with, is that life is a very patient teacher. Like almost annoyingly patient. It will put the same lesson in front of you as many times as it takes. It doesn't get frustrated. It doesn't give up on you. It just keeps setting up the same scenario and waiting to see what you do with it. And the scenario keeps repeating, not because you're broken or weak or a slow learner. It repeats because there's something in it you haven't fully understood yet. Some pattern you're still operating from without realizing it. And until you see it, really see it, Not just intellectually understand it, but genuinely go, oh, that's what I've been doing. The situation will keep showing up. Different names, same story. The moment you actually get it, though, it stops. It just stops. And that's when things start to move.
Third one, and this is where it gets a little weird.
Déjà vu. Okay, stay with me on this one because I know it sounds like I'm about to go full mystical on you, and I'm not, I promise. Most people have experienced déjà vu, that feeling mid-conversation or walking into a room where you're suddenly like, wait, I've been here before. I've had this exact moment before. And then it's gone, just as fast as it came, and you kind of shake it off and keep going. But I want to offer a different way of thinking about it, because I don't think it's random. I think those moments, that weird little glitch where time seems to stumble, I think they happen when you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Like some part of you, some deeper part that doesn't operate on logic and schedules and to-do lists. That part recognizes the moment before your conscious brain has even caught up. And if you think about when déjà vu tends to happen, it's usually not during the boring filler parts of life. It's not when you're doing laundry or sitting in traffic. It tends to happen during moments that matter. Conversations that end up changing something, places you end up returning to, people you end up keeping. I've started treating it as a little flag. Like, okay, pay attention right now. Something about this is important. And I can't prove that it means anything, but I also can't explain why it keeps happening right before things shift.
Number 4. Signs aren't warnings. They're redirections.
This one, I think, is really important because there's this default way a lot of people respond to strange coincidences or unexpected things happening, which is basically dread. Like something weird happens and the brain goes immediately to, okay, what's about to go wrong? But think about it differently for a second. Think about the times in your life where a plan fell apart, a door closed, something got cancelled, something you really wanted didn't work out. And then, later, sometimes much later, you realize that if that thing had gone the way you wanted, you would have missed something better, something you couldn't have even imagined wanting at the time. That happens more than we acknowledge. We're really good at remembering the times things didn't work out and it stayed bad. We're not as good at tracking the times that detour turned out to be the actual destination. So when something gets blocked, when the plan breaks down, when the path you were on closes off, that's worth sitting with instead of just pushing through. Because sometimes that's not life being cruel. Sometimes that's life just quietly going, not that way. Try this instead. And the trying this instead part only becomes visible once you stop white-knuckling the original plan.
The 5th one is your body knowing things before your mind does.
And I feel like this is the one people are most likely to dismiss, which is ironic because it might be the most reliable one on this whole list. Your body is constantly processing information, way more information than your conscious mind has access to, and it communicates that information through sensations, this tightness in your chest, this pit in your stomach, this weird lightness you feel when you make a decision that's right, even if it makes no logical sense. These things are not random. They're not just anxiety or digestion or whatever. They're signals. The problem is we've been trained, really heavily trained, to trust rational thought over physical sensation. Like, if you can't make a logical argument for something, it doesn't count. If you can't explain why something feels wrong, then it probably isn't wrong. You're probably just being irrational. But here's the thing about thoughts. Thoughts can be manipulated. Thoughts can be convinced. You can talk yourself into almost anything if you construct the right argument. Your body is much harder to fool. It just responds. It doesn't have an agenda or an ego or a fear of being wrong. It just shows you the truth and moves on. And I genuinely believe that a lot of the decisions people regret most, not all of them, but a lot, came with a physical warning that got overridden by a mental argument. That moment of, I don't know, something feels off about this, that got buried under, but it makes sense on paper, or, but I already committed. Learning to trust that signal, even when you can't explain it, is one of the more useful things a person can do for themselves.
6. Repeating the same patterns isn't a character flaw. I want to come back to the repetition thing because I think there's a layer to it I didn't fully get into earlier, and it's the layer that I think actually matters most. When people realize they've been repeating the same patterns, same relationships, same self-sabotage, same cycles, the most common response is shame. Like, what is wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? I know better. And that response is so understandable and also so completely unhelpful. Because here's what's actually going on. The pattern isn't a sign of stupidity or weakness. It's a sign that somewhere along the way, you learned a way of operating in the world that made sense at the time. Maybe it kept you safe. Maybe it got you something you needed. Maybe it was just the only option available. And that strategy got locked in. And now it keeps running even when you don't need it anymore, even when it's working against you, because that's what strategies do. They persist. And you can't think your way out of it. That's the part that frustrates people. You can understand a pattern completely, intellectually, be able to describe it perfectly, and still do it again. Because understanding isn't the same as integration. The shift happens somewhere deeper than thought. It happens when something in you actually feels the pattern from the inside and goes, oh, I see what this is. I don't need this anymore. That's awareness in the real sense, not just knowing it, feeling it. And when that happens, the pattern tends to just quietly stop. Like a script that doesn't have an audience anymore. And the last one. Right before things change, life gets louder. This is the one that almost everyone notices in hindsight. You talk to people who've gone through major life changes, real ones, the kind that reshuffled everything, and they almost always describe this period right before it happened, where everything felt heightened. Random conversations that hit weirdly close to home. A book you pick up by accident that says the exact thing you needed to hear. People showing up in your life at strange times. Thoughts and questions that had never occurred to you before suddenly taking up a lot of space. And in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like preparation. It feels like noise. It can even feel like things are falling apart. Like the version of your life you'd been living is becoming unstable, losing its grip. Old things that used to feel meaningful start to feel hollow. Routines that used to be comforting start to feel suffocating. And it's disorienting because nothing has technically changed yet, but something has already started. That's the transition. That's what it feels like from the inside, before anything on the outside has shifted. And I think the most important thing to know about that period, because it can be genuinely uncomfortable, is that it's not chaos. It's not collapse. It's preparation. Something is getting ready to move. And the loosening of the old stuff is part of what makes space for it. Okay, here's the part I actually want you to take away from this. All of these signs, the quiet wrongness, the repeated lessons, the déjà vu, the redirections, the body signals, the loudening, none of them actually do anything on their own. Like, I could make a list of 50 signs, and if you just watched this video and went, interesting, and went back to your day, nothing would change. The signs are not the thing. Your response to the signs is the thing.
And the response doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be quitting your job or ending a relationship or moving across the country. Sometimes the response is just pausing, actually sitting with the uncomfortable feeling instead of immediately distracting yourself from it. Asking yourself, okay, if this feeling is trying to tell me something, what would it say? What am I actually avoiding looking at right now? That's it. That's the whole thing. That little moment of honesty, of actually letting the signal land instead of bouncing it back. Because change doesn't start when the signs appear. Change starts when you're finally willing to take them seriously. When you stop waiting for a sign so obvious that you have no choice but to act on it, and start trusting the quiet ones. And if you've been noticing these things lately, if any of this felt familiar, then honestly, you're probably already closer than you think. Let me know in the comments which one of these hit hardest for you. I read everything.